Hey there, it's time for the show, the Tatiana Show, where you make friends and talk life and crypto. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the DeFi edition of the Tatiana Show. Josh isn't able to be with us today, but I have a special replacement for Josh, my good friend Amber Urquhart. Hey, Amber, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. Really happy to be here.
Yes, well, thank you for making it. You're out in Taiwan right now, right?
Yeah, here in Taiwan.
Cool. And then we also have Paul Pui, who's going to give us a layman's understanding of DeFi, which I'm excited about. But you guys may already know him because I'm sure that you have the Edge app. Anybody who's anybody in crypto has the Edge app. It's one of the best apps for holding onto your crypto that you could get on your phone. And he's really prioritized security. And I don't know, I just love Paul. He's a good old friend of mine, an OG. So thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Too kind. You two are way too kind. Thanks for having me on the show. And hopefully people do get something out of it and really have an understanding of the DeFi that they didn't have before. Because it is in some ways a complex topic and the industry has flooded them with a lot of the garbage. So we'll come out better after
Absolutely.
this show.
So my approach is I'll give everybody a setting. So Amber has been in the crypto space for a long time. She's also an OG in her own right. And she's now in Taiwan and she's saying, oh my God, we got to get in on this DeFi. All these people are making so much money. And I'm thinking, yeah, pump it up. But I don't know anything about DeFi. So a couple of weeks ago, I did a tweet and I asked, do you understand DeFi? And the options were, yes, I'm a genius. No, I don't understand. And no, but I pretend that I do. And the breakdown was 20% said yes, 40% said no, and 40% of people said that they don't know and they pretend that they do. So
only 40, huh?
I know. Well, it's 80% total don't understand what the heck is going on, right?
Yeah.
But, me and Amber are kind of trying to learn. She's definitely been a lot more immersed. I'm, somewhat of a newbie, but getting into it. And I'm excited about the prospect of having it explained for the average listener, right? So, Paul, would you like to give us a general overview of what DeFi is?
Got it. So the one thing we haven't said in the course of this entire episode is what does DeFi even stand for? So to start off with that, it stands for decentralized finance. And what I like to liken this to is, we first had Bitcoin, which is making an aim at creating a decentralized currency. And that one is usable and accessible on the internet, native internet currency. But what people forget about is when you use your own currency today, like, dollars, Canadian dollars, euro, and whatnot, is that the currency is kind of the first thing you need. And you just need to be able to send and receive it. In a way, you can think of financial services as many different layers. And the first layer is just literally send and receive. And right now we have to use a centralized service to send and receive digital dollars, euro, and whatnot. You've never sent dollars digitally without an intermediary, a centralized financial service. Bitcoin changed that. It allowed us to have the financial service of sending and receiving money without an intermediary. But is that all we ever do with money? Do we do anything else? Do we take out loans? Do we get interest-bearing accounts with our money? Do we take out insurance? Do we hedge? Do we trade the one money for another? So those are what I call kind of another layer of financial services. First, send and receive is the base layer. Bitcoin has achieved that. And then there's the financial services on top of that. That's where Ethereum came in. It being programmable, it allowed us to do fancier things with our money and effectively replace, not all, but some of the financial services that centralized companies build on top of money. And that was a concern of a lot of people that, hey, Bitcoin is nice and decentralized as a money, but our services were centralized. Some of the biggest centralized services in crypto, or the biggest services in crypto, are actually centralized. BlockFi gives you loans and interest-bearing accounts, fully centralized. Coinbase lets you trade, fully centralized. Other companies such as, what's it called? I think Celsius also give you loan and interest-bearing accounts, but also centralized. So DeFi is an attempt at providing similar services, but without that third party, without that central institution, a person to trust. That's at the heart of what it's trying to do. And it can do it for some services, but not all.
That was a really good overview. What are some of the ways that somebody could use it? Because it sounds like people are just pumping it up and getting rid of it. So that's been I don't know, it just seems like a
That's
lot
what
of
made the news.
gambling.
It is a lot of gambling. And so the thing about it, if you look at the base level of what DeFi is supposed to offer you, it shouldn't offer you gigantic returns. And neither does most of the things that are in the kind of boring, regular financial services. So let's take a clear-cut example of one use case of DeFi and how it mirrors kind of CeFi, centralized finance. In the service that BlockFi, as an example, gives you, you can take your Bitcoin or BlockFi's Bitcoin and another company, Cred, which we support several different cryptocurrencies. And you say, hey, to me, this cryptocurrency has long-term upward value. So I don't want to sell it. But at times I want to be able to reap some of its reward and be able to buy something, like maybe I want to pay off a credit card, which is a high interest rate, or buy a car. And for some people, for some whales, I want to buy a house. I want to sell this crypto and buy a house, but I don't actually want to sell it because I think there's still upside value. So what can you do with your crypto? You can go to a BlockFi or a Cred or a Salt and say, hey, I'm going to take out a loan in dollars, but I'm going to collateralize it. I'm going to back that loan with cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, ETH, or whatnot. That's a service that's currently incredibly popular with centralized services. Well, what you can do in DeFi is almost exactly the same thing. There's a service called Aave, and there's a few others that allow you to then put a cryptocurrency such as ETH, or in the case of Bitcoin, wrapped Bitcoin, it's a tokenized version of Bitcoin like Tether, put that into a smart contract. Don't do any KYC, don't give it any personal information, you don't talk to any centralized service. You deposit this into a smart contract, and you are then getting dollars at a certain ratio. So usually you have to, just like when you get a loan, you need to have a higher value than the amount that you're borrowing. So as an example, if I were to put in $10,000 worth of Bitcoin into the smart contract, or wrapped Bitcoin into the smart contract, I could take out a loan of maybe $4,000, $5,000. And if that Bitcoin crypto goes up in value, I can still reap that reward. But now I can take that $5,000, it could be in a stable coin, cash it out into my bank account, mostly one for one, and then pay off a credit card. And I've actually done this. I didn't want to sell some of my Bitcoin, so converted it to wrapped Bitcoin, went ahead and took out a loan for about half its value, and then sold that stable coin into my bank and then paid off a credit card, which was what, 15 to 20% interest. And the loan I'm taking out is about 5% interest. And with crypto, we're not in it for 5%. We're in it for 10x. What's the popular term? I don't wake up for less than 10x. So if I have a confidence that my Bitcoin is going to go up more than the 6% interest that I'm paying per year, then this is a good deal. If it goes down, then that's just a bad bet. So this is a perfect replacement for what CeFi is giving you, but in a DeFi world. And there's a flip side of that. So people go, well, how are you able to take out this loan, right? There's no magic, who's the other person? The smart contract can't just automatically give you dollars for it. Well, there's another person on the other side that wants to lend their money. And we call those liquidity providers. They lend their money, they lend their stable coins, dollars, Tether, USDC, DAI, they lend it and they get the interest that you pay. So I'm paying about 5-6% interest into the system. The system then gives them some interest less than that, say 4, 3, 2, or 1%. It's exactly like what a bank would do. A bank takes money from someone that wants to provide liquidity, basically like your savings account, right? When you give money to your bank that goes in a savings account, they give you an interest. Right now, a really, really, really shitty one, sub 1% interest. But then they take your money and lend it out to someone else that needs a loan, and they charge them a much higher interest, 4, 5, 6, 7%. That's exactly what a smart contract is doing. What we've done is just like the promise of Bitcoin and made this thing censorship resistant, accessible globally anywhere in the world. That's what a DeFi product that allows lending and borrowing on the other side to do. Same product as a centralized service, but globally accessible, censorship resistant, and replacing a lot of those existing services that the banks offer.
Okay, so I have a couple questions. So I thought about putting my money into Celsius or Salt, but I was a little bit concerned because, what if this company goes belly up? How do I get my coins? What if they run away with it? So I'd like to understand the safety aspect of that. But then I also want to understand DeFi seems even more sketchy. What if they're, just going to run away with the funds? I don't really understand how it works on a technical level. And who's responsible for that? If it's just peer to peer, how does that keep a user safe, right? Because I'm not, I mean, granted, I'm really into Bitcoin, but I consider myself to be a pretty conservative person when it comes to finance. It's funny when you're in Bitcoin, but still, nonetheless, I don't want to start lending out my crypto. Although I like the idea of making money off of it, or paying off a loan and taking out a loan, because I do feel that it will go up, especially if we've got some time. So, how do you mitigate any kind of
Running
danger
away
there?
with the money. Right. So the running away with the money that you would have if you put your money into a centralized service is the centralized service deciding to break their own rules. So I could provide the same rules as a centralized service, but mirroring a DeFi smart contract. The rules of a smart contract in the case of lending and borrowing are very, very simple. It's simply, okay, you have an asset that you want to loan. All right, so you're going to loan that into the service. The service locks that up in the contract. And then the only time that I will give it back is if you ask for the money back and I'll stop giving you interest. So this is, think of an interest bearing account, right? Interest bearing account, someone deposits money into it. And if you ask with your private key, just like you have to have your private key in Bitcoin to spend it, you have to have your private key to retrieve the money out of the savings account. And that's what the smart contract is saying. There's no one there that can just simply run away with the money, because those are the rules hard-coded, embedded in the program. In a way, it's the legal contract that a bank normally would have, but turned into code that's immutable. So you deposit your money and only with your key can you withdraw the money. Someone on the other side is also depositing money. That's the collateral. So in the case of what I had done, I deposited a Bitcoin token, right, wrapped BTC, into the system. And what the smart contract, in a way, this decentralized bank is saying is, okay, well, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to issue you the dollar-based token, such as DAI or Tether or USDC, and would issue you that at that ratio of the funds that you deposited. So you deposited $10,000 worth of Bitcoin. I'm going to give you $4,000, $5,000 worth of this stablecoin, which came from the person that had lent it in the first place. Right. So if this was the case of me and you, Tatiana, say you're the one that wants interest on your dollars because you're in some developing country, you don't have access to the banking system. There's no way for you to get any interest, not even the crappy 0.5% that they might give us here in the US. So instead, you can deposit into the smart contract, and now you're earning, say, 2-3% interest on it. That interest comes because that stable coin, that dollar-based coin, goes to me. I borrow that. And the smart contract is the one that says, I'm going to take and shave your Bitcoin a little bit every few blocks at the equivalent of 6% interest per year. And I'm going to give some of that over to Tatiana because she's the one that's lending it. That's what a bank exactly would do, except that now there's no person there to make the decision of, hey, do we follow the rules or not? It's embedded in the smart contract. We have to follow the rules. That's what's really protecting your money, is that private keys are what are controlling the money, plus this contract that people can't break, they can't modify it. So as long as I have my private keys as someone borrowing, then I could pay back the loan and receive my Bitcoin back. And as long as you have your private keys, you can say that I want to no longer have my money in this interest-bearing account. I can take it out. You're not telling Celsius, hey, please take my money out. You're just signing a message, sending it to this, in a way, decentralized bank or financial service and saying, hey, I'd like to withdraw my money.
So
Hopefully that kind of gives an understanding of the security model.
Is that going to put like a Celsius or a Salt out of business?
Yes and no. So there's, in the same sense that, hey, is Bitcoin going to put the centralized payment networks out of business? Is it going to put gold out of business? It has the likelihood in the very long term if people start to reduce their reliance on an equivalent service, an equivalent centralized service. So right now people trade gold and use gold as a hedge against inflation, a hedge against economic turmoil, but most people do so through a gold ETF, right, where they're trusting a centralized service. Is Bitcoin going to do that to gold and gold ETFs? It may have already started taking away some of their business, but it hasn't completely tanked. I mean, the gold ETFs are still a giant economy. And there's some people that prefer going through a centralized service because they're in a developed country. They're used to being able to make a phone call to somebody. They don't want to deal with, launching MetaMask and blah, blah, blah. So there's a demographic of people that will continue to use those centralized services. But So that's the no part. And I think that won't change for a very long time. The yes part is as more liquidity starts to go into the DeFi services, that's when you get more stability. And you also start to get more interest in the service. And you also start to get better interfaces, more apps, maybe written in different languages on different devices. And it becomes much more accessible to more of the population than the early phases of DeFi applications. Like I used, Aave to do this kind of lending my Bitcoin, collateralizing a loan and then paying off a credit card. But it definitely took quite a few steps. And as we'll see in the future, it'll become much more streamlined. And yes, it's going to start really, really chipping away at a lot of the centralized equivalents. I fundamentally believe so, but it could take a while.
Okay, these are great. This is awesome. So I'm going to hand over to Amber in just a couple questions, but I wanted to understand some more preliminary stuff. I've been in crypto forever, and I'm listening to you, and I'm like, I don't know how to do this. So how does a newbie even take advantage of this? Right? Like, how do they even know is Uniswap good? What's this sushi thing? Are we going to have a bacon next? Like, what the heck is all
Yeah.
this stuff? And how do you even know that a company like Salt or Celsius or whatever is a good manager of this, right? So
Yeah.
how does anybody get familiar with that? Because it starts to get really complicated very quickly.
It gets complicated. And I think the thing that I didn't even remotely touch on, which is probably the reason why you're having this episode in the first place, is why all the hype and why are a bunch of people getting rich? And why are these tokens skyrocketing in value? What do they have to do with DeFi? And so I like to explain DeFi and its true long-term value, because especially a lot of the Bitcoin maximalists will say, oh, it's just a casino pump and dump scheme, a bunch of people getting rich while tanking the wealth of a lot of other people. And there is an aspect of that, but that's a layer on top of the base level value, such as what I described to you, taking out a loan and getting an interest bearing account. And that's one example of what DeFi can do. And that has nothing to do with pump and dump schemes. Now, where the pump and dump schemes come in, what some DeFi services have done, and they're realizing that this brings a lot of attention to their system and a lot of liquidity to the system. And liquidity is an important piece. It's hard for me to go and take out a loan and deposit my Bitcoin and get a stable coin back if there's no one else on the other side that actually wants to loan me the dollars. I mean, it's almost like an exchange. They call it a money market. You need people on both sides of the market for it to work. There's little liquidity, doesn't work so well. So what some systems did in Compound was the kind of first to kind of roll this out into the market and first initially create the big wave of DeFi hype, is they took their own token, the Comp token. And the purpose of this token is really to provide governance around the system, to try to say which assets are we going to support for loans and for borrowing. What are the interest rate equations that we're going to use depending on how many people are offering liquidity versus how many people are wanting to take out a loan. Those interest rates are variable, just like in the regular banking system. But who decides those interest rates? Well, the point of the Compound Comp token was that it allowed a decentralized governance and decision making amongst all the people that hold that token. But what they did is they first airdropped it. They airdrop this token over a period of time on anyone that was providing liquidity to the system. People who were saying, I'm going to deposit some money so that other people can take out loans. So participants in the system got these tokens. Now, that sounds well and good. That actually sounds like, hey, that's a good monetary incentive. I'm incentivizing people to take part in my network by giving them these tokens. But that created a really huge discrepancy and kind of an incorrect value proposition behind putting in money for liquidity. So normally you put some money in, say you put in $1,000 and you earn 4% interest. There's no getting rich on that, right? Like 4% interest a year, no one's getting rich on 4% interest a year. You're barely just kind of dealing with inflation at that point. But because you put money and are a contributor to the liquidity of the system, you got an airdrop of tokens. And then suddenly everyone's like, oh my God, I should put some liquidity in because I want to get those tokens. And then all these other people are doing it. And suddenly there's a key metric in DeFi, which is total locked value. How much value is locked inside of the smart contracts? I mean, how many people have deposited money that they want to give out in loans? How many people have collateralized loans? Suddenly that total locked value starts growing and growing and growing and growing and growing. And all of these charts of DeFi projects show the rankings of total lock value, and something like Compound were shooting up the charts. And if anyone knows anything, you know that if you can get buzz and get talked about in the media, people start gravitating towards your project. And if your project has a token, people start buying it. And that's effectively what happened. They were airdropping this token. That token was causing a large amount of value to get locked in the contract because people wanted to contribute to receive the token. That created media buzz. It created this circular feedback loop where people said, well, what's Compound? I didn't heard of that. Why does it have so much locked value? Oh, it has a token? Oh, maybe I should go and buy that token because I don't know. I don't even know what the token does. But if Compound's doing well, this token must be doing well. So they buy the token. It goes up in value. Because it goes up in value, other people say, oh my God, I want to go ahead and put liquidity into the smart contract because it's going to drop tokens to me. And those tokens are worth a ton. You see this circular feedback loop that just creates more people depositing liquidity. Token goes up in price. More people want to deposit liquidity, and it's unsustainable. And I'm as much as I am a fan of DeFi, I do fundamentally believe that is unsustainable, and we have seen a correction in that. Right? You can't just keep going up in value forever. Plus, why would I even want the Compound token? Because the only value of it is that I can vote on the governance of the system. Do I even care to do that? How many people like to vote on their HOA? Most people don't even want to vote. I hate to say it. How many people actually vote in elections? So most people are like, just leave me alone. The system seems to work pretty well enough. And I don't even get paid to vote. So I think when people realize some of these governance tokens, while they're necessary to keep the system decentralized, most people don't even want to use them, and there's no monetary incentive. Some do give you a monetary incentive. They give you a little bit of that interest that's cut off the top. They skim it, send it over to the people that hold the governance, much like a bank will take some of that interest. So they're borrowing money from someone, and they're giving them a little bit of interest. They're lending it out at a higher interest, and then that difference is what the bank takes. Same sense, some of these money markets will take that difference in interest spread and spread it off to the people that have their token. And that at least gives some monetary incentive, but nothing that should be a moonshot 10x, 100x in value over a really short period of time. That's why you've seen all of the buzz around DeFi. That's the core reason why you've seen it. And admittedly, yeah, that is the get rich quick, pump and dump, tank the wealth of a bunch of people that are just buying into the token. Other than they're just stupid for doing that. But what I've seen too much in a lot of these podcasts, especially from people that aren't into Ethereum, not into DeFi, is they say DeFi is just a scam. DeFi is just a pump and dump scheme. It's just people buying tokens and selling them, getting rich. But they're forgetting about that base layer of the service it's providing, independent of these airdrop tokens. And that's the thing I really want to stress. Don't forget about that. That actually has value. It is replacing centralized services.
Okay. I'm gonna hand it over to Amber. I have another follow-up question, but she's gone a little bit deeper, and I think that would be worthwhile. So go for it, Amber.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so what I've seen here locally, I feel like the demographic is really, around 25 years old. And what I find is really interesting, and it's really completely community driven. Like things and projects are like happening and launching so fast that to really only be involved, you're really like you're talking in the chat groups and really like talking amongst your friends. And you mentioned governance tokens and like kind of went over yield farming, but I feel like the whole experience has been like gamified. And how do you feel about that? And do you see the trend also?
For me, the gamification of DeFi.
Yeah.
It absolutely is gamified. And and the gamification comes in with that token, that governance token, the token that doesn't actually have to do with people depositing to get interest-bearing account or collateralizing a loan, not actually using the service. So the fact that the additional token, a governance token, a token that represents the network is being airdropped, that's what's actually causing kind of the gamification. And if you think about it, it's working. If you need liquidity in a market and you're motivating people with points, I mean, think about how many apps have you used that don't even give you any money. All they do is say, hey, you are now leveled up. You're now at 2 stars versus 2.5 stars and 3 stars. Yelp does this with the Yelp Elite. People that do a lot of reviews, they give them different elite statuses. They're gamifying it. Now, in a sense, this is effectively what some of these services are doing. And one of the more popular ones, Wi-Fi, which I covered in a podcast a couple of weeks ago, they did the same thing. They airdrop tokens, which are these governance tokens, but in a way they're gamifying the point system of saying, hey, thanks for contributing to this network. Thanks for depositing funds. into this network, we're going to go and give you points for it. Now, they try to, and I don't know if this is reverse psychology, they try to say, hey, these tokens have no value at all. They're only going to let you vote on the governance. They're not going to receive any money from the network for having this token. Don't buy it. It won't be traded. We're not going to ask for it to be listed. And maybe they meant it as reverse psychology. And if they did, then it worked because it did gain value. People did start trading them. It got listed on exchanges. And the people that had them and were able to sell them at their peak made a ton of money. But you're absolutely right. It is gamification. And it is giving people points, rewards for contributing to the network. But the scale at which it moonshot in value, these different tokens, is purely unsustainable. There's no way you can sustain that over time. But that demographic you're talking about, the 24, 25-year-olds that are really, really born into tech, are constantly in front of their computer, they can handle it. They're going to take advantage of it for as long as it lasts. Much like people took advantage of the 2014 shitcoin boom, where all you did was just simply copy Bitcoin and do nothing else to it, as well as those 25-year-olds are going to take care. They took advantage of the token boom in 2017, or it's what's the next ICO, buy it, sell it. They'll take advantage of this one. Doesn't mean that is what the product is. That's, I think, the important takeaway. It's a different product.
You're getting a lot of overlap from projects because it's all open source. So you're kind of seeing a lot of repeats.
Oh, yeah. You're seeing a lot of repeats, especially in that money market space. So I was talking about Aave was the service that I played with and tried and actually did pay off a credit card using the service. But if you think about it, this makes sense. This is the same sense that, you've got some money, you want to put it into a money market account, you want to put it into an interest-bearing account. You can go to a website and say, hey, which services give you the best interest to deposit your money? I know I did this back in 1999, there was 6% savings account. Who even hears about that now? But around 1999, there was a 6% savings account. And I found it through a website and I put my money there. Mm-hmm. The Wi-Fi service, what people think it's just this gigantic roller coaster of Wi-Fi or Wi-Fi tokens that shoot up in value. That service is not unlike this website I went to, except that it's actually more automated. Instead of me going and looking for what's the best interest-bearing savings account and putting my money there, instead I put my money in this Wi-Fi smart contract, and it will dynamically, almost every block, move my money to whichever service has the highest interest rate. That's not a lot different than putting your money with a fund manager, like a centralized fund manager. Tatiana, you're in New York. Probably every other guy you run into is some kind of trader fund manager. Hey, give me your money. I'll figure out the best place to put it. That gives you the best returns. Now you're doing this with a smart contract that has very simple rules. It just looks at all the different money markets. Which one has the best interest? I move your money along with everyone else's money into that service. And if that's no longer the best, it withdraws it and puts it into another decentralized finance service and another until you choose to withdraw using your private key, allowing you to withdraw those funds. That's what the core heart of the Wi-Fi YFI system is, and it makes perfect sense.
I have a question because another pain point I'm having, do you feel that there's going to be a shift in demographics because of these new kind of tools? I think personally that there's going to be a shift in education. I have these uncles and older generation that are okay, we want to buy these coins, but now how do we get an account? We need a separate wallet. How do we get this wallet? How do you feel that there's going to be a new demographic kind of entering, and what's the easiest way? How do you even explain to them risk management? Because people that have, grown up with Bitcoin, we're so much more aware of this kind of risk management. How do we kind of get new people involved in?
Got it. So risk management, that is a key thing that I think anyone listening to this that's not a fan of DeFi will say, Paul, you're leaving this piece out, right? Risk management. And this is the tough part, which is why I think we're in an early phase, and people will use it as the technologies just simply don't have issues over time. As they mature and people have been banging on them and they haven't been compromised, then it just invites more people to use it. And I think that's the only thing you can do. You can only have so many audits. It just takes time. So the risk aspect of these DeFi solutions is that they are programs, right? They're not a group of people in a building that are making decisions. So usually a group of people in a building, the risk is that they'll make a bad decision, especially one that's different from what they promise you on a written contract with your money in an account with them. The risk with DeFi is that the contract just has a bug in it. It's simple as that, right? The gamification is wrong. It has a bug in it where, it says that only you with your private key can withdraw the money, but maybe it forgot that someone else with this private key, if they do this certain action and people vote a certain way, can also withdraw the money. And those are the type of bugs. Fortunately, smart contracts are generally open source and they can be reviewed by a ton of different people. In the centralized world, you sign a written contract, and you'll notice that written contracts kind of read like code. They read very similarly to technical code, except that they always have a fuzzy out. There's always a lot of fuzziness to them. And that's so that you can leave some decision making to humans. But in the smart contract world, that's difficult. There's almost no decision making into humans. So that is the risk. And admittedly, if a project has been out for less than a year or two, then there's incredibly high risk that there might be an issue in the code, and that code might have to get replaced. That's where the governance tokens come in. People can vote to replace the code with another block of code. But early on, it's just simply risky. And I'll bet early centralized financial services were also highly risky. When you had a whole bunch of banks around the country and they'd come and go and come and go, which money do you put, what bank do you put your money in? Hard to say. Same sense here. It's hard to know what money to put your DeFi in. But I'm guessing when you say we're going to reach out to a different demographic, the older people who want to, I hear this term, buy these tokens. That is a invest, pump and dump, I want to get rich term to say. I want to buy these tokens, especially when it comes to DeFi, because that's not the service that DeFi is offering, right? It should say, hey, I would like to take out a loan. Hey, I want to put my money where it bears interest. If they say those type of things, now you're talking about what the actual services entail. If they just want to buy these tokens, they're going to the casino. That's literally it. They're just simply going to the casino. Very, very high risk, potentially high returns if you can time the market. I'm not looking at necessarily building tools to make that easier. I don't think people should be building tools to make that easier for a much older demographic and a more conservative demographic. Leave that to the younger, play with their money. They've got many years to earn it back. But from the viewpoint of being able to provide the service itself, I want to have an interest-bearing account. I want a loan. That already is getting easier and will improve over time. And yes, I think it would be a great target to be able to get to some of the older demographics, some of the boomers, to say, hey, you could take money that's in your bank account right now, say it's in dollars, and at the click of a button, buy DAI, a dollar-based stable coin, and deposit it into a smart contract that gives you 4 to 8% interest, far better than your bank account. That could become a one-click button, but it's not yet.
This is still scaring me. Um, okay, I have another question to change. Okay, I have a friend who has a crypto project. It's been built out, and he's not as involved in the marketing side, but there are people pushing within his company that instead of basically they're trying to use DeFi as a method of raising money. And he's saying, "Oh, well, some people can stake our tokens." And I was like, "I don't know about that, buddy. Can you explain why somebody like, let's say, because to me it sounds like he just wants to do a token sale, right?
Mhm.
So why would they even do DeFi at all? Can you give me some insight into that? Is that a good idea
Well,
for somebody trying to raise money for a project?
it entirely depends on what the project is. So this is just back to 2017 again, where everything was suddenly a token just because people were willing to buy tokens because they were liquid and they could sell them. They could pump and dump them really easily. A company should be focused on the product first. Like, what is the product? Is it a compelling product? And then after that, does the product need a token? If it needs one, then great. If it doesn't, then don't. And that could be a smart contract project or not. That's kind of the question at hand. And yes, you're right. Many companies and projects are incorrectly saying to themselves, we want to be a DeFi project because that's the hot item. That's a hot term right now. That's the hot buzzword. And then they're saying, yes, we should have a token because many DeFi projects do have a token and they can sell it and raise money. But they're thinking about it inversely. Think about the project first. Now, granted, if you want to have a token and you want to be able to raise money through a token sale, then maybe you are initially in the early stages of your company thinking about a specific DeFi project. But don't turn your project into DeFi when it's not. Like, don't brand it that when it's not, because then you're compromising the quality of your product and making it where there's a token that you now have a commitment to bring value to because you've sold it to some investors and they want a return on it. And potentially there's no actual correlation between the success of your company and project to the success of the token. And then you have a very misleading token sale. So I don't know what this project is that your friend's working on, if it's deployed, if it's launched, if it has a smart contract. if it even needs a token. But the overlying advice and insight is, build the project first, determine later if it needs a token.
Well, they
And if
built it
you
out. So the tech is already done, but I can't really tell
describe
why
what
they
is,
would need this. Huh?
um, is it in the Bitcoin cryptocurrency smart contract DeFi space?
Yes, it is. It's a crypto
Okay,
project, Bitcoin
it's a
blockchain
crypto
project.
project. Okay, it's a crypto project. So I don't know the exact details of it. I have to see, but there are cases where if they're trying to make this as decentralized as possible, the most common way are these governance tokens, admittedly, and that is in essence a need. Like you need other people to contribute voting to decide on the rules of a smart contract. And if you want to make this censorship resistant, accessible for anyone in the world, you don't want your company or your foundation being in full control with a kind of God key that can say, do this, do that into the smart contract. You want that to be a decision made by thousands of people. And one way to do that is with a separate token. Whether you sell it as a fundraising mechanism or just issue it so that people actually use it is independent. And in the case of Wi-Fi, that token was simply issued. It was never sold. It was just simply issued to all the people that were contributing to the network. And that was seen as one of the most fair distributions of a governance token. It was like the Bitcoin of DeFi. Satoshi started very fair, started mining very fair. He didn't pre-mine anything. Same as what happened with the Wi-Fi token in comparison to Compound, which, not to knock on them, but, they sold tokens to investors. They raised money. They built the company. They gave it to employees, staff, contractors. They built the product and then later gave tokens as a use case. Like the utility of the token was not there until much later in the project. And then that's when that was basically the IPO moment for investors. Suddenly it was publicly tradable and people made a lot of money.
Okay.
So hard to say until you know the exact project and what it's doing. Then hard to say whether or not it should have a token. In my eyes, many projects, generally speaking, shouldn't. And that's coming from a guy that is building an app that lets people hold tokens. So, I'm not trying to come from a point of bias. I'm sure I am biased, but I like to give the other point of view as well. In that sense, yeah, a lot of products don't need a token.
Okay. Amber, I think she had a question. Go for it, Amber.
Yeah, I have a question. I think everything is at the current state been predominantly Ethereum. Do you feel other protocols being able to handle like all this DeFi projects, or do you see it all being Ethereum in the future?
Got it. So they're mostly Ethereum because Ethereum has the liquidity, and just like an exchange needs liquidity, so do these DeFi projects, like the lending and the borrowing I was referring to. If you're lending, you need someone to borrow it. If you're wanting to borrow, you need someone to lend it. And Ethereum has the most visibility. It also has, of all of the programmable currencies, it has the most stable asset of ETH, which can be frequently used to back a lot of these DeFi projects. So in issuing a stable coin such as DAI, something needs to collateralize that stable coin to keep it stable. And the less volatile that collateral is, the better. And so while ETH is very, very volatile, it still is the second market cap currency, and everything below it is likely even more volatile than ETH. So yes, other projects could do exactly this. They have all of the technical capabilities of doing all the DeFi that ETH is doing, but they just don't have the liquidity, the visibility. That could change over time. I'm never going to say that that's dead in the water. Just like social networks can change, and the popular term of Facebook replacing Friendster and MySpace didn't feel like it could happen decades ago, but it did. In the same sense, ETH could get replaced by another blockchain, but right now it's network effect is hard to displace. Now, one thing that is promising is being able to do DeFi using more native Bitcoin, not having to trust a counterparty. So when I used this DeFi service, ironically, there was a central trusted counterparty. So I should fill in this blank. When I went and paid off this credit card using Bitcoin, a Bitcoin collateralized loan, I went from Bitcoin to wrapped Bitcoin. Wrapped Bitcoin is the equivalent of Tether in the sense that there is a custodian counterparty that is holding the actual Bitcoin on my behalf and then issuing a token that represents the same peg, same value as Bitcoin. And then I use that on Ethereum. Rootstock, RSK, is a system that gives full Ethereum programming capability, but as a side chain to Bitcoin. So you can convert Bitcoin to smart Bitcoin or RBTC and do that without a counterparty that's not at least not a single centralized counterparty, but actually a federation of signers that are locking Bitcoin on the Bitcoin blockchain and then issuing smart Bitcoin on the Rootstock blockchain. And that has full capabilities just like Ethereum. And DeFi projects can and are being launched to do very similar type services on Rootstock. So I think that will be a trend that might appeal more to the more Bitcoin purists, so they're not having to both trust a third party and also not having to be on the Ethereum blockchain.
Excellent. This is super helpful. We're coming up against the end of this segment, but I wanted to let each of you kind of show what you're up to, because people are thinking, oh my God, these people are so smart. I want to work with them. So tell me a little bit about what you guys are working on. I know Amber's organizing an event out in Taiwan right now.
Yeah, I'm building a community out in Taiwan to kind of connect crypto people with people who are interested into crypto and other entrepreneurs across Asia.
Excellent. And she's partnering with my company, Crypto Media Hub, too. So that's cool. Now we've got our Asian Connect. Yes, I got to go visit.
That's awesome.
I think because everything is completely decentralized. So, what Tatiana and I think we kind of cross full scale on projects who want to grow.
Cool. How about you, Paul?
So I'm still cranking along with Edge. So we've been launched since 2018 and growing steadily, adding new assets, adding support to let people buy, sell, and trade crypto around the world. We've got over, like 16 partners now that let you buy using different methods, credit card, debit, bank accounts, native money transfers in places like Australia and the UK and parts of Europe. You can even buy and sell Bitcoin with no KYC from a bank account in all of Europe and Switzerland. So great partners that we've partnered with to offer that service. And then once you're in crypto, you're on the financial superhighway, then you can go from one crypto to another pretty easily using both decentralized exchanges integrated in Edge, as well as some centralized swapper exchanges like Changely, ChangeNow, Godex, and Fast. So all that's still in our app, and we're cranking along, seeing great growth. So this industry has been very good to us this year.
Absolutely. It's been a very fun year. I'm going to have to go back and listen to this episode again and just do a little bit of a review, but this has been really great. I hope that it answered some of the questions that people have. I know Bruce Fenton has his video scribble explaining what DeFi is, which I thought was really funny, but I think you made it a little bit simpler this time. There was no flames or cake involved, but I hope I see you guys in person soon and we get to, nerd out in person. So
next time you're on, what is it? Was it a cruise? I think next time you're on a cruise from San Diego or to San Diego, let me know. You were in my neighborhood at that time. It was always nice to sync up.
Yeah, absolutely. Plus you've got Eric Lombroso over there, who I adore. Him and his wife are just super cool. I got to make it out there. Have you seen George? No, George Burke. He went out to Hawaii. So everybody's traveling now.
Hawaii, actually. No, I got to do some paddleboarding with him before he went out to Hawaii. Yeah, he was here for a little bit and we got to hang out.
Yeah. See, this is what happens, guys. You have fun in crypto. You don't just do nerdy stuff. You go paddleboarding, you travel around the world, you make, 2000X.
Yeah. That's only a piece of the fun, making 2000X, right? It's the travel in the world, spending the 2000X that some people are fortunate to be able to do.
Excellent. All right. Well, thanks both of you very much for being here.
Thank you guys. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks for having.
We'll have the show notes for our guests if you guys want to connect further. Thanks so much for watching The Tatiana Show. We'll see you next time.
What's the point of all this technology without a little love in our lives? Our hosts, Tatiana Moroz, Dr. Stephanie Murphy, and Lauren Kasovitz, have come together to bring you Proof of Love. Go to proofoflovecast.com. The Tatiana Show has been brought to you by CryptoMediaHub.com, a boutique marketing and PR agency for Bitcoin and beyond. Hey there, it's time for the show, The Tatiana Show, where you make friends and talk life and crypto. We gotta think and reflect and use lots of intellect with our hearts when we work together. I know that it can be so hard out there, looking all around and saying, that life ain't fair. So that is why we will fight and stay up late at night, listening to the Tatiana Show. Thank you for listening to the Tatiana Show. Please follow us on Twitter at Queen Tatiana or on Facebook and Instagram at Tatiana Moroz Music. More episodes can be found at thetatianashow.com, and make sure you leave a review on iTunes and tell your friends. You are listening to The Tatiana Show. This show may contain adult content, language, and humor and is intended for mature audiences. If that's not you, please stop listening. Nothing you hear on The Tatiana Show is intended as financial advice, legal advice, or really anything other than entertainment. Take everything you hear with a grain of salt. Oh, and if you're listening to us on an affiliate network, the ideas and views expressed on this show are not necessarily those of the network that you're listening on or of any sponsors or any affiliate products you may hear about on this show.